Welcome, you're listening to The Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really significant event, the Pahalgam terrorist attack, and India's response, Operation Sindoor.
Indeed. And the central question that keeps coming up, especially for those tracking international relations, is justification. Was this response, Operation Sindoor, justified under international law?
Specifically under Article 51 of the UN Charter. That seems to be the crux of it.
Exactly. So our mission today is to, well, unpack the nuances of Article 51, see how it applies,
Yeah.
particularly with this whole issue of non-state actors involved.
Okay. And we're basing this on analysis of international law, the UN Charter itself, drawing from reports on Press Reader.
Right. That's the plan. So to start, let's talk Article 51. Before we even get there, though, it's crucial to remember Article 2, Paragraph 4.
Right, the general rule, the one that basically says states shouldn't use force against each other.
Precisely. It prohibits the threat or use of force. Article 51, then, is the main exception. It outlines the inherent right of self-defense, but only if an armed attack occurs.
An armed attack. That sounds specific. And there are guiding principles too, aren't there? Like necessity, proportionality.
Spot on. Necessity means the force used has to be, well, necessary to repel the attack. And proportionality means the response can't be excessive. It has to match the scale of the initial attack, more or less.
Okay, that makes sense for state-on-state conflict, but where do non-state actors like terrorist groups fit into this armed attack definition?
That's where it gets tricky. The International Court of Justice, the ICJ, weighed in on this, specifically in the Nicaragua versus U.S. case.
Yes, I recall that case. What was the key takeaway regarding non-state actors?
The court basically ruled that an attack by a non-state actor only counts as an armed attack under Article 51 if that attack was carried out, and this is the key phrase, by or on behalf of a state.
By or on behalf of a state. So direct state involvement or control. That sets a pretty high threshold.
It does. And, India's position after Pahalgam was that the attackers were trained and supported from Pakistan.
And they briefed the UN Security Council members. I remember reading that. Does briefing the UNSC automatically satisfy Article 51?
Well, briefing the council is part of the process under Article 51. States invoking self-defense are meant to report their matters immediately. But it doesn't automatically answer the legal question of whether the initial event was an armed attack attributable to a state under that strict ICJ definition.
So if direct attribution is difficult, how else might a state justify acting against terrorists in another country's territory?
This brings us to the, let's say, evolving concept of the unwilling or unable doctrine.
Unwilling or unable. Okay, what's the core idea there?
The argument is essentially that if the host state has non-state actors on its territory launching attacks, and that host state is either unwilling to stop them or genuinely unable to do so, then the state being attacked might have grounds to act in self-defense within that host state's territory.
So it bypasses the need for direct proof of state sponsorship under the ICJ test, focusing instead on the host state's failure or inability to act.
Kind of. It's presented as an alternative justification pathway. A prominent example often cited is the U.S. operation against Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. The U.S. argued Pakistan was, perhaps, unwilling or unable to deal with the threat.
I see. But is this doctrine universally accepted? It sounds like it could be controversial.
Very much so. It's definitely not settled law. Countries like Russia and China, for example, have been quite critical. They often raise concerns about state sovereignty and argue it could undermine the UN Charter system if states start unilaterally deciding when another state is unwilling or unable.
That's a fair counter-argument. Sovereignty is a cornerstone of the UN system. Has India officially adopted this doctrine?
India laid out its thinking quite clearly back in 2021 at a UN Security Council meeting, an ARIA formula meeting, I believe. They stated conditions under which they might consider this doctrine applicable.
Oh, what were those conditions?
There were three main points. First, repeated attacks by the non-state actor. Second, clear evidence the host state is unwilling to take action against the group. And third, that the host state is actively supporting or sponsoring that group.
Interesting. So repeated attacks, host state unwillingness, and active support. That last one sounds closer to the ICJ standard again.
It does blend the concepts somewhat. Following Pahalgam, India's public statements strongly accused Pakistan of inaction and harboring terrorists. So while maybe not explicitly naming the doctrine, the argument seemed to implicitly invoke that unwilling or unable logic, especially focusing on the alleged unwillingness part.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it seems the justification for Operation Sindoor under Article 51 isn't straightforward. It really hinges on how you interpret armed attack when non-state actors are involved, and whether you accept the unwilling or unable doctrine as a valid, let's say, legal basis.
Exactly. It's a complex legal and political balancing act. And for you, the listener, especially if you're preparing for UPSC exams, grappling with these questions is vital. Think about it. How should international law adapt to threats from non-state actors in the 21st century while still respecting state sovereignty?
That's a crucial question with no easy answers. Understanding these international law nuances is certainly important for mains and prelims, but also just for being an informed citizen.
Absolutely.
If you found this deep dive helpful, please do like, subscribe, and maybe drop a comment with your own thoughts or queries. We do read them.
We do. And remember, our discussion today drew from analysis found on Press Reader.
Thanks for tuning into The Deep Dive.